When I first started out in my journey in public speaking, I was terrified, nervous and anxious. Fast forward 29 years later, I can stand in front of a stage, 5,000, 10,000 people, you name it. It doesn't make very much of a difference to me. All I know is that I needed to struggle against that terror, that anxiety, and I believe some of you do too. But there's a turning point, right? Where did that turning point actually occur? I'm about to share that with you. It's a little bit embarrassing to talk about all the things that have happened in the past where I wasn't enough and things were just not going well. But I'm going to say it outright anyway. When I was a kid in primary school, I was an okay student up to about primary 3, and then my grades started to nosedive. And that was the point of time where my parents kind of knew that I needed some help academically. So they sent me to a program called Super Teen. For those of you who've never heard of it before, it is kind of like a super camp for the Asian crowd, run by this guy called Dr. Ernest Wong, my very first mentor, very first influence in public speaking. Now, I've got to warn you guys, for those of you who are Malaysian and you know Ernest, no offense, but Ernest doesn't have the most perfect diction, and he most certainly has got an accent that doesn't resonate with a lot of people. The truth is that when I saw him, and I come from a background where English is my first language almost, it struck me as kind of awkward and odd that someone like him was able to speak in spite of that accent. You know, I don't think he thinks it's a debilitating problem, but I found it awkward. I mean, I put myself in his shoes and I asked myself, how can I even speak with this kind of an accent? But he proved me wrong. I mean, during the very first presentation I attended, he made people laugh, he made people cry. It was touching, it was inspiring, it was motivating all at the same time. It blew my mind. And I said to myself, if I could be 1% of this, I could have a lot of influence, a lot of power over the crowd because I could influence their emotional states. And that was the start of almost everything. Sure enough, my grades were terrible. I went in, I started to learn about mind mapping, memory skills, the ability to feel a sense of great confidence, study techniques that will help me to prioritize more effectively. And all that translated, within the span of 1 month, I ended up becoming first position in class. Later on, fast forward, this allowed me to help other students to become better, and it became what I call a full circle experience. Well, the full circle experience is an interesting thing. A long time ago, my partner Eleanor and I were at loggerheads with each other, right? It wasn't a fun experience chatting with each other, but over time, I came to appreciate, understand, and really lean into what she was capable of, and vice versa. She was the first person who came and told me about the term full circle. I understood it from a conceptual viewpoint, but her viewpoint was more like we evolve, right? And then we go through cycles. And because we go through cycles, we evolve through practice. And if we're constantly practicing the wrong things, we're going to evolve into bigger negative cycles. But if we keep practicing the correct things, we'll have virtual cycles. So when you come to full circle experience, just like myself, I was terrible in my studies. I was barely scoring 50%. And I ended up becoming first position in class at 72.6%, which was a huge jump. A lot of people came up to me and said, did you cheat in the exam? And of course, I didn't. And lo and behold, the rest of the class started to perk up their grades because they saw that, gee, this guy, he can improve. He's not as intelligent as I am. I probably can improve too. So as we continue in full circle experiences, we create what Marianne Williamson says, the permission for other people's light to shine. That, in my opinion, is the power of a full circle experience. When I was a terrible speaker and then I grew to become a fantastic speaker, at least to some groups of people, I know that might sound a little bit arrogant, but there are some people who actually believe that I've improved by leaps and bounds. They can see the flow in me. I can go up and present, even given 5 seconds notice, when their speaker is kind of like the expected speaker is not shown up or something happened to them. So what I've come to experience is that the full circle is a pattern of being, it's a pattern of life from a negative experience to a much more positive experience by going through the mill. So for example, you were physically unhealthy. And then you went through certain kinds of training regimes and methodologies, and then you became really healthy and maybe super fit to a point where it caused people to swoon. Now that's one example of a full circle experience, the mountain that you have conquered. Another full circle experience in my case was studies, right? I was a terrible student and then I became an A student by struggling against the grain and becoming far better than I thought I could ever be. Likewise, in public speaking, I was terrible, but because of Ernest's influence, I ended up becoming far better than I ever thought I could be, participating in Toastmasters district level competitions and coming up champion. Never in my life would I have ever thought that that was possible because nobody presented it to me as a possibility. And here's the thing, the brain tends to think in the direction of a better choice that you can take. If you don't have possibilities, you can't choose, you can't make options available for you so that you can choose better. And the reason why I wanted to talk about the full circle experience is because many people are not aware of how the full circle experience actually takes place. Now, I want you to take a sheet of paper, right? Just grab a sheet of paper and draw an axis almost like a T-chart, but you put it in landscape form. And what you want to do is anything that's above the line is a positive experience in your life. Anything that's below the line is a negative experience in your life. And what you're going to do is to chart a stock graph of the good and the bad in your life. So how much positive experience have you had? How many negative experiences have you had? And see whether you can identify the moments in your life across, ages 0 to whatever age you are right now. And as you chart this, you'll notice something interesting. There will be positive experiences. I want you to reflect upon them and think about what you learned in those positive experiences. Then I want you to take a look at your down moments, the crashes, the moments where you are left floundering, desperate. And I want you to list down what you learned during those experiences. And I want you to tally all of them up. Maybe you'd like to pause the video for a moment just to do that right now. It's probably going to take you, 5 minutes or so. Don't expect to have a perfect graph, but expect to have significant moments listed in this graph. And you can go back to this over and over again so that your reflection goes back to understanding yourself a little bit better. So go ahead, test that out. And if you've already done so, that's great. I want to ask you this question. I'm pausing a little bit dramatically just in case you still haven't paused it to do your reflection. And the key is that when you reach a peak in your life, usually you have thoughts like, yeah, I'm the bomb, right? I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest of all time. But it's unlikely that you learn very much else. Unless you approach it from a standpoint of being grateful to the circumstances and the people around you. And that's a very deliberate effort, right? If you go on the downtrend, however, you learn a lot more. Some of them will be negative beliefs. Some of them will be positive beliefs about what else you ought to do. Now, the journey between your down moment towards your up moment is where the moment of gratitude is. That's where the contrast is. That's where you will discover that there have been people who rallied around you, who picked you up. There were circumstances that enabled you to shine. There were certain lessons that you learned and mistakes that you eliminated so that you can become far better than you ever were before. And if you go through this process, you come to realize that you have thematic full circle experiences. In my case, I tell the story of how I lost lots of money by being cheated, over $1,000 in book sales as well as anticipated sales because of a couple of former employees who cheated on us. Fast forward, I made so many bad investment errors. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by putting my money into places where they shouldn't have because I just didn't think through it properly. And as a result of that, it caused me a lot of angst and it caused me to feel really, really terrible about life. And it was just a downward spiral. Fast forward to today, I take a look at all those moments as moments of sharpening my edge. And it gives me a lot of empathy for people who are going through the same thing. That's one of the reasons why I'm a coach. That's one of the reasons why I'm a consultant, because I know exactly what it's like to go through the stages of business that you're in. And think of me as a crystal ball, right? I've walked through so many difficult moments, I probably could preempt the future. And that's what's going to make a very big difference to people whom listen, pay attention, invent their future, and create more options for themselves. They look at the full circle experience of negative to positive, almost like a hero's journey. And that's one of the reasons why, from being a terrible student to being a great student, I could now have the authority to teach other students to do exactly the same. From my experience of being terrible at managing my business to someone who's decent at managing my business in certain industries. Of course, I'm not the greatest of all time. I just happen to have some know-how, more so than some other people relative to their experience. And it's given me a little bit of joy every time I'm able to point out something and somebody goes like, wow, that's fascinating. I never thought about it before. I've gone through tough emotional moments, right? Call it a divorce, breakup, financial distress, you name it, right? Relationship distress. And these distresses have caused me to feel like it's all over and I have to start from zero. But guess what? Starting from zero is not a bad thing. I talked a little bit about this in one of my earlier videos on the way we create meaning in our life, and somewhere in the video, click on it in order to watch it later on. Full circle means that firstly you want to detect the negative cycle, then you want to convert that negative cycle into something a little bit more positive. So anything that's negative that seems to be getting worse and worse ought to be getting less worse. Things that are getting better should be getting even better because you are tracking a positive process in your life. And this pattern can only be done by intentionally observing, reflecting, and then deciding. So I observe what exactly is happening to me. I reflect, is this good or is this bad? And then I decide, no more, I'm gonna move away from this and I'm gonna find my coaches, my mentors, in order to push myself in that same direction. I mean, I was ridiculed in class for not being able to stand up and read a passage in my textbook at an early stage in my life. So it was debilitating, but I didn't want to face the prospect of embarrassment all the time. I needed to have something to say, and therefore I capitalized on my learning capabilities and used that to share with other people. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. I learn stuff, I process stuff, and then I share stuff so that people like yourself can benefit from it. And if you find that this has been beneficial and you know people can benefit from it, please help me by clicking on the bell notification icon, because YouTube won't let me share this with many people unless you are helping me as well. So if you think that this has been valuable and it's being given out for free and it's given you some kind of perspective, please click the like button, click on the subscribe button, click on the notification icon, share this with friends whom you feel can make a difference, and I guarantee you that this itself can become a full circle experience for you. The ability for me to contribute has only come because there have been so many people who've contributed to my life. And I can tell you, without the experience of their assistance and without me putting myself out there to try and help them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it's not as if I am like a billionaire or anything like that. That's beside the point. What really is the matter is that I am far better off than I used to, emotionally, spiritually, physically, than I ever was before. And I want to share this blessing with the rest of the world so that you can elevate yourself to a level of thinking that transcends suffering, pain, challenges, past ways of thinking about your life. And then, because of that, hopefully your mindset transforms, it evolves so that you can take actions to abundance. See you in the next video.